come down to the final week now, and it's all been decided who our final two teams are. The Hershey Bears and the Stockton Heat will face off. Two meetings earlier this year, both taken by the Heat, but we saw similar numbers for the Bears against the Crunch. We'll see what the Bears are able to do in this series against a team that has been incredibly hot all season long. A tough fight with the Iowa Wild, but they were able to get past them. The Bears possibly seeing their best competition so far in the playoffs. How will they fare? We'll talk about it today. T-Sibs with you, Vibes, Dead Soul, MGM. We're all here to talk about the finals, boys, and we're finally here. It seems like the season's gone on forever, but maybe because I've been in the playoffs for so long. We are.
Oh, it's gonna be rough. Sibs.
Oh, MG. I don't know what's up with your connection, but you once again sound like you should be in a Star Wars episode. We'll get back to you in a second. Maybe you need to drop and come back. The playoff picture, as we've seen with the bracket all season long, we are down to the final two teams, the Bears making it out of the East and the Stockton Heat out of the West. Tough road for, maybe a little bit tougher road for Stockton than we anticipated, guys. And the Wild, I had the only one of us had the Heat picked, and that was Vibes in 6 games. And rightly so. I mean, you could have picked either team in this one. Stockton looked like they might have been the stronger team most of the season, but the Wild were incredibly built with their roster and certainly gave them a fight. But Vibes, since you picked Stockton, I'll let you go first. What made you feel in the end to go with the Heat over the Wild?
To be honest with you, I mean, I've just felt like. I mean, that's why I picked them early on. I picked them to win everything. And I was going to pick Stockton heading in, and then Dead Soul gave his excellent analysis last week. And, he actually convinced me that maybe I was making the wrong choice. So for a while there, I thought about taking the Wild. But I stayed with Stockton. They've been my boys all season. They have amazing forward depth. And that's what it came down to. It was just the depth of this team, the defensive depth. I mean, you got guys like Matt DeWatt who, I'm sure a lot of us could either take him or leave him, but you can't take the fact away that he's a good player. You know what I mean? You can't take that away from him. And just their defense, top to bottom, offense, defense, it's just a solid team, and that's why they were able to edge this out. But this series, I mean, obviously, a Game 7, Wilder down 3-0 to start, and it ends up going 7. These were two titans, absolute titans, and I don't want to take anything away from the Bears coming up here because, they've shown what they can do as well, but this Western Conference heading up into these finals has just been, it's been a murderer's row, So teams like Texas, the Checkers, it's just all the way through. So to come out of the West, man, it's Stockton's a solid team.
Yeah, Stockton, even with the Golds, they handled the Golds well, but the Golds were a team that were playing a lot better, surging somewhat, and he figured Stockton was going to take that, but the Gulls gave him a good match, even for the games that they did play. Then hitting Texas, who had been incredibly hot, then having to play the Wild. So Stockton has not had an easy road, and they've played a couple of teams who could have easily beaten them and taken them. And I think, MG, that might, again, go to the parity of the league, as well as Stockton played all season long. They maybe in the first season or two, we might have seen them walk all the way to the semis and maybe have somewhat of an interesting series there. But that was not the case for a team that was incredibly hot all year long. They had to fight to get to this point.
Oh, exactly. There's just so many good teams and so many good players. I think teams are really focusing a lot more on systems and playing as a team. I don't think you're seeing as many teams that are just riding a few good players. I think they're they're deep from first line to third line, and I think any team that made the playoffs this season could be in this final series here. So it says a lot to come all this way and beat a lot of good teams to get to this point.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a lot more organization throughout the league for sure. A lot of good management on all the teams, and certainly more parity as we've spoken to throughout the season. And it obviously has made for some really, really fun hockey in series, and it's I think it's only going to keep getting better from here.
Well, Stockton has had some great production from Loops and Wally, who are both 8-0 in the playoffs this season, leading scoring with 29 and 28 points respectively. When you get that kind of offensive output from at least a line that's played as a top line a couple of times, that does an awful lot for you. And those guys outputting and being able to put them into a Game 7 at any point has been a tremendous advantage for them. And, we'll talk more about the series coming up, but the Bears, in a Game 7 are going to really have, if it gets to that far, if they can get it to a Game 7, it's going to be a hell of a matchup, and it's going to be a tough one for the Bears because Stockton not only has a great forward line to play in that game, but they'll always be able to have solid defensemen. You mentioned Mathau and a few others who are incredibly good defensemen. Trash Clown has played well as well in gold, plus they have Flyers. If it gets to a Game 7, I think Hershey probably doesn't want it to get to a Game 7.
Probably not. I was talking about the depth of Stockton, but aside from that, this team can really stack the line against you. If in a decisive Game 7 like that, they can really, really stack the line against you. So, and the funny thing too is like we've spoken about in the past whether or not in the Game 7 if you just put all your best players out or if you stick with the guys with chemistry. Well, the thing about Stockton is their stacked line has chemistry. So. A Game 7 would be really tough against this team, and they've proven it time and time again. So,
well, I think offensively you can't. I don't think you can just look in on.
Well, we lost MJ. He's got some issues there. He may need to dial up again. We'll get to him with his thoughts in a minute. But actually, let's talk specifically about the two semifinals that we watched. We'll get to the Wild and Heat in a little bit. We'll talk about that series, but let's get over to we've talked about the Heat a little bit. Let's talk about the Bears and the Crunch. I expected the series to go 7 games, possibly to 6 games, but it would have taken a monumental effort for either team to be able to stop the other one, quickly. At least that's what I thought. But the Bears only needing 5 games against the Crunch. What was in your mind vibes the reason why the Bears were able to take this series so quickly from a Crunch team who proved themselves against the Senators, who were a team definitely favored to be there in the semifinal game, possibly the finals? Why did the Bears take this one in 5 games?
I think that they just believe is what one of the big factors is that they just believe in themselves and they believe that they can do it. This Bears team, it's funny. This ends up being the first time that I've picked a series incorrectly. And I remember when I was making the pick, I actually even said it. I said, this Bears team doesn't get enough respect. And I think that's kind of true, and I think it held true in this series where they're really not given the respect that they deserve because they've shown by now that they can play, and they're for real, And in a way, it's I don't like to get into all the destiny thing, but in a way, this Bears team kind of seems like just to be a team of destiny. It just, certain times as you go through playoffs and playoff rounds, some teams just seem like they're going to find a way to do it. And right now, this Bears team just seems like they have that.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
I think. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead. You were in the middle of talking before me before, so.
Well, yeah, we'll see
Go on.
if MG how long he can stay on before we lose him.
All right, you know
Okay.
what? I'll go. How about I just go? All right.
Yeah.
These
I think that
overly nice Canadians are just making me sick.
Right.
Go ahead, MG.
After you, eh? Um, I think if you look at the top 10, if you just take the two teams head to head and you look at point production in the playoffs, I think maybe you'd probably think that Stockton has the edge. But the top 10 point producers between both teams, 7 out of those 10 are Hershey Bears players. I think obviously the top 2, Loops and Wally, are kind of standouts as the top 2. But after that, it's an edge to Hershey for sure out of point production.
Yeah, and I actually did watch these games here with the Bears and the Crunch, and I knew going in that the Crunch were a tough team, and I thought, the team to beat. And, that being said, I know they put out kind of more of a sacrificial first game kind of thing to try out, and then just try and throw some more of the heavier lines against the Bears afterwards. But when I watched these games, I hadn't realized just how much chemistry those guys actually had. It just looks like they're playing really, really well together. Everybody seems comfortable. It was really perfectly executed hockey, but between the forwards and the defenders and just everybody being involved in just a defensive game, but also just being able to put up the points. It was really, really fun to watch those games and see a team play like that and just play their best hockey at the best time for them. And they clearly were able to dominate most of those games.
Lobo Dangles, who goal scoring leader in the league this season, only played one game in this one, and obviously Syracuse was hoping to use him in 6 and 7, try and get by Game 5. And we're looking ahead, and there's that strategy. And then, of course, there are people who will say, well, you got to get past that game first, so that's your most important game. How big of a factor do you think, Vibes, it was that Lobo only played one game?
I don't know how much of a factor it was, considering the fact that, the jury is still kind of out on him, whether or not he's even really he's towards the top of the pack in regards to league leaders in the regular season, but the jury is still out on whether or not he's even legitimate. Many have used the term scrub hunting, and if that's the case, then I don't know how effective he would have been anyway against this Bears team, because the Bears team, there are no scrubs on the Bears team, so I don't know who he's going to be hunting.
What's interesting is if you look at the just going back to the Bears quickly, and we'll let you get your responses in about Lobo. The Bears, 6 players in the top 14 in scoring in the playoffs so far, and I think the spread of the wealth here is probably one of the reasons why the Bears have been able to be so successful. We've had all the lines firing well, and it's been a big deal. I don't know, MG, if Lobo only playing one game was really that much of a factor. You have to have your other lines play well too, and if they're not winning, it really doesn't matter. And the one win that they did get was with half a second left to go, after the Bears had Nismo had a partial break and couldn't connect. That very easily could have been a sweep in this one. I'm not sure that Lobo playing only one game was that much of a factor, MG.
I don't think one particular player can completely turn a series around, but I think Lobo, you can't discount Lobo, what he can do. He only played 6 games in this playoffs, and he put up 3 points per game, 18 points, 9 goals, 9 assists. And these are against playoff teams, so I don't know how much you can call him maybe he did scrub hunt during the season, but he's a good player. You can't deny that.
All right, but excuse me while I push MG out of the way real quick. So they win that game 2-1. Lobo Dangles is in it, but I didn't get to watch the game, so I didn't see whether there was anything to his 2 assists, but he was pretty much, from what I can see, not much of a factor. They could have been secondary assists. I don't know. I'd have to watch, but I mean, it's not like he took that game and won it for them by any stretch.
Well, if you go back and look at him, especially the last goal, that was it was textbook what these guys can do. They worked the puck fairly well. They pass well, and it was pretty much a slap pass from Lobo that was deflected in. It was one of those goals. So, again, we could talk all day about quote-unquote greasy goals, but it's it's something that's in the game and people use it, and it is what it is. But for the most part in that game, our plan was to keep them to the outside, was to slow them down, and it worked well all planned. But, Bob Swagger actually said, look, this is what we're going to do, and we're probably going to have to win this one late in the game. And we almost did it to the book, exactly how it went. If you have a good plan going into it against any top player, Dead Soul, if you've got a good plan going into the game, you can neutralize just about anybody. The only guy I really saw who was incredibly tough to neutralize isn't playing in the league right now because of a suspension. So I think any of these top guys you can neutralize if you have a good game plan going into it.
Oh, absolutely. And if you, obviously you guys did have one, you could tell just the way that you were all playing, and I'm sure you guys have been practicing as well, but somebody like Lobo, who can be a very big factor in a game and can help his team, get that win, he can be, contained if you know how to play against him, if you're familiar with his style of play. And he is a very aggressive kind of center. So if you know that going into it and know how to kind of be able to hold that back, then it certainly helps overall with being able to keep him off the scoreboard. So, and I think, it factors in a little bit maybe, but I don't think it's a major factor for them losing. I think all the lines needed to probably have a bit more of a game plan with you guys. Maybe they took you guys a little lightly. I don't know. I think they did play some good hockey when I did watch it. It's not like they had any crazy breakdowns, but I just think the Bears just showed up being the more well-prepared and more well-rounded team.
I think preparation can only take you so far, though. I mean, there's just going to be you're not going to be able to stop it. You can come up with all the plans you want, and the better team is going to prevail. I mean, you got to think that Iowa went into that series with Stockton well-prepared, with a finely well-oiled machine of a team with a good defense. Great defense, probably a good plan to go up against them, and they couldn't stop Stockton. So I think all the planning in the world isn't going to help you if you don't have the players to win you the game.
Yeah, you need to have the talent. I mean, you could easily argue back and forth about which side had the more talented forwards, but going into the game and seeing how they played, obviously the argument would be more on the side of the Bears for this matchup. But either way, I mean, they made a good game, and I know that the Crunch did give it their all, but the Bears they've been a great team all year, and they just continue to plow through everybody. And I think this is going to be this next matchup is going to be a tough one to call.
So, do you guys think the Bears are for real now? Obviously, a lot of talk this past week about whether or not they had played enough good teams in the playoffs so far, and thinking that playing Bridgeport and playing the Pens were not great tests. Now, they've played the Crunch, one of the top teams in the East, obviously, that a lot of people thought. And, of course, a lot of folks, there were plenty of people who picked the Crunch, but I think it was about 60% on the website that picked the Bears. Does this quell the naysayers about the Bears? Is it are they taken seriously enough now?
I think the naysayers should have been quelled a long time ago, if you ask me. I think that this Bears team has proven time and time again that they can play. And I mean, I was when tasked with picking this matchup, I mean, the Stockton and the Wild matchup was hard, but this may have even have been harder to pick. So they're for real. They've been for real, and if they haven't gotten your respect and have caught your attention by now, then you're doing something wrong.
I think I can see where the community's coming from, though, as far as what who their opponents were in round 1 and round 2. They were probably the 2 lowest teams in the entire league. Both teams being in any other division wouldn't have been in the playoffs. So I can see why some people would have been skeptical as far as not facing any real competition, but any of those questions were answered against Syracuse. I mean, Syracuse took out a tough team in Utica and Binghamton. So to take out Syracuse, I think that answered everyone's questions about if Hershey was for real or not.
It does say a lot. I mean, they're doing their talking on the ice, and that's what matters.
Let's go.
We could go on the other end too, and
Yeah.
I always like. I have a thing for blaming management. I really like blaming management and telling them that it was all their fault. This is the second season in a row now that JMM is ousted in the conference finals, right? It didn't happen last season as well.
I'd have to look back, but I think so.
I think you're right.
I'm pretty sure against the Ice Caps. So apparently he can't get it done. I mean, it happened to me too. In season 1 and 2, I was ousted in the second round. I think that the season 2 comes with an asterisk, but this is the second season in a row. So apparently he can't get it done. So maybe we throw a little bit of blame on him too. I'm okay with that. I'd like to blame him.
Well, I mean, that's well. I don't know. You'd have to really do an analysis of maybe the players, the type of players that were there. I mean, he put together a couple of solid teams who certainly were there and were competitive and were on paper good teams, but for whatever reason it just didn't quite work out. Now, you could also talk about game management. Do you do what he did in Game 5? Do you come back with your strong suit, knowing that you need to win 3 in a row and you've got to start the momentum somewhere? Is that something that you consider when you talk about whether or not somebody's managing the team well? Is that where you lie fault? Because I think he builds good teams. You might want to talk about what he does in game and starting lineups. Maybe that's the issue more so than whether or not he puts together a solid team. I think that's pretty obvious that he knows talent, but maybe I think maybe for this series against the Bears, you try and put your best line out there for Game 5 and you do it one game at a time. I mean, every manager has a different viewpoint of this, but I'll leave it up to at least to Vibes and Dead Soul. If you're in this situation, what do you do in Game 5? Do you try and put your best line out there? Do you try and gain momentum, or do you try and steal one and hope that you can use your best players for 6 and 7?
Well, dynasties rise and fall in the playoffs, and that really it's a huge part that separates management tiers, like the elite from the okay, from the terrible, or whatever. But absolutely, I mean, you're down 3-1 heading into Game 5, and you don't put your best lineup out in Game 5. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. You know why that's a mistake? Because when you're heading into a Game 5 down 3-1 and you're in a must-win situation, Game 6 doesn't exist. There is no Game 6. Game 6, Game 7 does not exist. They are not a reality. You have to win Game 5 in order to make them a reality. So absolutely, if you're down 3-1, you come out with your best lineup because you have to win that game. All right? And maybe you put yourself in a tight situation for 6 and 7, but hey, look, they didn't do it, and they didn't even play 6 or 7.
Yeah,
but you're assuming that he had a choice in the matter as far as putting out his best line. Maybe that line that he put out was the only line he could put out for that night based on availability, right?
I can assure you with our situation that would have been something that would have happened to us. Like, we didn't have a choice. We had our lines set the week prior based on the availability that was available to us. So that certainly could have factored into it. I don't know for sure if that was his issue or not, but yeah, I would have loved to play. If I was in his position, I would want to play the best players I can possibly play in that game. But again, if they're not available and you can't get them together, there's not much you can do. So sometimes it's out of your hands. And was this the case in this scenario? Hard to say at the moment, but if it wasn't, then obviously that's something that would be on the GM in this situation. But I mean, a team like the Bears too. Just to get back to them for a quick sec here, I mean, one thing that might factor into this team being so good and so strong is the fact that they have 10 veterans, people with a lot of NHL experience and people who have gone up against, arguably, obviously, a lot more talent as a whole. So I think coming down to the AHL and playing on that team has really been able to help, with their experience as a whole in this league. And I think that's why the Bears have just been so good overall, and continue to be. But yeah, getting back to that situation with the crunch, it's hard to call on that. I mean, we'd have to ask GMM what the situation was there. But I know that when going into it, he did have a game plan. He did have a certain way of thinking with his lines, and it didn't pan out.
If he didn't have the guys available, I mean, if the players weren't available, that's one thing. But I mean, I'd have been knocking on people's doors with the PlayStation controller, like, here. So I don't know, but maybe it's not his fault entirely.
I don't think we can I don't think you can put JMM down too much. I mean, 26 other teams that would have killed to be in the position that he was in the last 2 seasons in a row. I think he's doing just fine. I mean, it's a pretty tough job to have all the stars align and everything work out perfectly that you make it into the Calder Cup. There's just so many factors that go into it.
Yeah, his team in last season, again, the Crunch, 120 points, tied with the Gulls for the most points in the season. Again, a good, solid team put together there. He had Dangles on that one as well. A bunch of other good players. You guys can go look at the stats on your own. And they did lose out to the Ice Caps in the first round, but. Again, I don't question his ability to put together a team. I think he knows talent very well. Just his strategy hasn't worked out well, and I for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out with lining up the games and getting your guys out there. So, we could talk about this forever about the Crunch and what's happened the last couple of seasons, but. I still would want JMM as a GM if I am up in the bigs and I'm the owner. I would still want JMM running the team.
Absolutely, he's very experienced and very good at what he does.
And so let's we've talked a lot about this series. Let's go back to the Wild, but talk about them in reference to the Heat. Again, down 3-0 in this series, the Wild, and after that third loss on Tuesday, we were starting to wonder, well, what's going to happen next round? Are the Heat, if they really blow past the Wild, is this something that the next team that has to play them worry about? The Wild weren't thinking that. They came back with 3 wins immediately. Including, of course, that Game 6 win where the Wild had tied it up at 1 with that quote-unquote glitch goal that was protested, but the game was not overturned. The Wild have to be given some credit for not giving up in this series, taking it all the way to the 7th game and making it a close one and giving the Heat all they could. The Heat losing momentum like that in a series, I wonder how that's going to play against the Hershey Bears. Do they worry about that, or do they take that as a lesson and say, hey, we can't get too overconfident if we're up 3-0 in a series. We've got to push game in and game out every time. And I wonder if they've learned that lesson after the series, because the Wild absolutely gave them all they could after the first 3 games.
I would hope that they would learn a lesson from that, at least on other people's behalf there. It was, it was pretty exciting to see that happen with going 3-0, and at the same time, very surprising. Well, maybe not too surprising, just the fact that it's the Wild, obviously. But to have the Wild claw back and come up with 3 other wins outside of that made for some really, really fun watching, of these games. So I guess the Bears, they need to be ready and know that anything can happen. We've seen it already a number of times here. And I mean, they've already kind of done that with the crunch in the sense that they were able to take them out so quickly. But the Heat are a team not to be taken lightly, just like the Bears. And both teams just have so much going into this game and to the series that it's a very tough one to call. And I don't even know where to start with all this.
So, well, I'll tell you what. Let me ask Vibe something. The Wild down 3-0. Be honest. Did you think it was over at that point?
Well, I was really surprised to see it 3-0. But yeah, I thought it was over. I thought maybe, I thought the Wild would probably win a game, maybe 2 games. But to come back from 3-0, even the series, and go to a Game 7, I didn't see that happening. I don't think anyone expected thinking Syracuse crunch. I don't think anyone expected the Heat to be up 3-0 coming out of the gate like that. So that was a surprise. And then when the Wild came back and even the series, that was a surprise too. So.
I mean, it really shouldn't be a surprise when you think about it. I guess for either team to be able to do what they did, it's just it was pretty fun to watch that though, and see how I honestly wasn't sure. I thought that Game 4 would have potentially gone to the Heat just the way that they were playing, but then all of a sudden this huge comeback, it was just pretty crazy.
MG, what did you feel at that point when it was 3-0? Did you think the Wild would just cave in on Game 4, or did you feel like they still had the talent to win this if they if they were dedicated enough to keep running?
I wouldn't have expected them to maybe push it to a Game 7, but I knew they were going to come back and at least take a couple games. They're just too good of a team to get swept. But to come back to push it to a Game 7 and then take it right down to the wire, I think that there's a reason why they were the top league in the team this season.
So the winning.
Unfortunately, I agree with him. I don't think anyone expected them to, even when they were down 3-0, I don't think anyone expected them to just sweep them.
Now, it wasn't actually the winning goal. It was the game-tying goal in Game 6. I just want to talk about this one briefly, just because there was a lot of discussion going on about that, where Trash Clown got stuck in an animation, and that wound up being the tying goal at the time, making it 1-1. Stockton, of course, as management will say, hey, look, we need to file something on this and see if what the league thinks. Part of it is whether or not it should be something that should be seriously looked at by the league as a glitch, quote unquote glitch. And number two, a lot of folks in the shout box were saying, why are you even doing this, Stockton? Can't you just take a loss? And I know a lot of guys had a lot of opinion about this, but I want to get the vibes last on this one. I want to start with Dead Soul as a GM. Is this something that when you saw it going on, did you say, yeah, I understand you've got to protest this and see what the league says, or does your own feel about this kind of quote unquote glitch say that this is all part of the game and why even bother?
Yeah, I mean, it does depend on the situation. That one I didn't watch over and over. I saw it live, and then I saw all the fallout afterwards, and people saying that what happened was a kind of an accident or a glitch of the animation. And I mean, as GM, especially in a game like that, and just how much is at stake, it's important that if it's something that glaring, that maybe it should just be reviewed, just to see that maybe is there something that can be called off with that, or is there something in the rules that can kind of verify that kind of thing shouldn't have counted. But at the same time, I know as my time on the bog, we had a number of situations kind of similar to that, and ultimately it always came down to the fact of whatever the game calls it, it is what it is, obviously within certain parameters of certain situations. But maybe the league could take a look at that again and just kind of see, is that something that they should maybe look at it as something to maybe put a rule in about. I know, for example, in our game, we had a guy that, well, he was pretty close to the goalie, and yes, he did hit the goalie, but he came out of his way, and then all of a sudden, the defender on the other side pushed him in front of the goalie, and he hit the goalie again, which resulted in a turnover goal. A situation like that, in my mind, I thought, oh, well, maybe there's a rule about that, but there isn't. And should there be? Maybe, maybe not. But these things happen. This game's weird and has some glitch things like that. But at the same time, it's pretty damn frustrating when you're the team that's being affected by that in a negative way. So, I mean, I think they did the right thing and at least taking to the league and asking about it. But, it's part of the game, unfortunately.
MG, the whole discussion that was going on about this goal, do you feel like it's even, should it be categorized as a glitch? Is it, I mean, it's a glitch, I guess, in the game, but is it just part of the game that everyone has to deal with when they play goal, or is this something that the league should actually get involved in?
I don't know. I don't think it happens enough that it needs to be a rule. I mean, obviously, it's a playoff game and it's a high-profile game, and you don't want to see something like that happen. But I don't think you could. I mean, I understand they're calling it a glitch goal, but it wasn't like Iowa did some sort of sneaky cheat move to score this goal. They just took advantage of a goaltender that was out of position and stuck, right? I mean, if Stockton didn't want that goal, I mean, they should have dumped it over the glass, take a penalty, do whatever you have to do, get that puck out. You couldn't get that puck out. Shit happens in the real NHL. There's empty net goals. Just because it's not fair doesn't mean it should be overturned.
Yeah, if anyone watched the Ottawa and Ranger game yesterday, Senators goaltender Anderson, you could say he lost the puck and he personally glitched and almost caused a couple of goals to go in for the Rangers. And, if it went in, do you call it back? I mean, this is, I get it's a human being compared to a game, but still, like you said, shit happens. And it's something that every goaltender knows can happen. It's funny. I did drops later on that night. Happened to me twice in a drop. We all know it's going to happen. It's all part of the game, and you have to know how to recover from it and deal with it.
I mean, until they make a rule about it, and as far as if there's a goalie that is glitched. But I mean, if a goalie gets held out of position, what's to stop him from just skating in the corner and pretending he's glitched or holding a position? I mean, you could look at it all different kinds of ways, and I mean, you're never going to please everybody. So I think you just have to take it as it is and just roll with the punches.
All right, Vibes, I'm going to give you a shot at this.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, it's a part of the game, for example, if it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals or something, and somebody walks in and decides to shoot the goaltender, and the goaltender dies, and the puck goes in. I mean, it's part of the game. No, I think that I think that Stockton was absolutely right for challenging that, and I would have challenged it as well. And anyone who says otherwise, well, they're wrong. It's number one, as a GM, if you're not trying to win, no matter what, if you're not trying to do whatever it takes for your team, then you suck as a GM. All right? If you can't do that, if you can't take a little bit of heat from people telling you that, why are you challenging it and, upset and, calling you all types of names, then don't be a GM because, listen, you got to do what it takes to make your team win. And I understand that in LG, there's kind of a community aspect and, you might be on someone's team next season or whatever the case may be. And you want to keep a certain level of, camaraderie with the entire league, I guess, as a whole. But at the end of the day, people on other teams should respect the fact and they should know the fact that as a GM, you do what it takes to win. And until we are teammates, I don't like you, because the whole thing is, with the league, it's supposed to emulate hockey and real hockey. And that's how real hockey is. If anyone's ever played real hockey at a competitive level, that's the way it is. Unless you're wearing my jersey, I don't like you. Okay. And then once you are, then, maybe we could figure things out. But absolutely, I think they should have challenged it. I think that they were right for challenging it. And I'm going to take it one step further and say that the goaltender was glitched. And there needs to be some sort of consistency in the league because I remember last season, I'm pretty sure it was actually in the conference finals, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was between the Ice Caps and the Crunch, actually. And I forget who it was, but a goaltender was glitched. It was a little bit different because it was the butterfly hop that was going on.
Right.
But that being said, it's still a glitch and it's not in the player's control. And anything that's not in the player's control, that causes a team to either win or lose, I think it should be looked at.
Anybody want to rebut what Vibe said as far as that actually being a glitch? It should be.
Don't even worry about it because they're wrong. They're fine. It's okay.
Well, he has a point, and I do agree with a lot of what he said. Absolutely. I mean, it was well said, but there needs to be a little bit of consistency. I mean, if there's been overturned goals in the past, then there's that kind of thing you got to look at, and it's not really fair to the teams going forward if there's like that kind of inconsistency if that's happened in the past. So. It wouldn't hurt to have certain kind of rules, just maybe something a little, like not too broad, but a little specific. Like if there's a very specific kind of glitch happening and the goaltender cannot move, and you can tell in a replay that they cannot move. Again, like MG already kind of stated, well, maybe they can kind of fake it in a way, right, or whatever. But we all know what happens. It's something that's part of the game, unfortunately. And I mean, it's hard to be able to just kind of make a very select kind of rule about it because of that. And I think if it's something where the guy just flies out of the net suddenly, that's pretty easy to discover. If it's like he's just kind of like gliding across the ice in a very unnatural movement, he's not skating, then that's a glitch that you can't help. But if it's something like what happened, I mean, you can kind of tell, but it could be argued, right? So it is an interesting thing that I think maybe they could think about, and maybe there should be something a little bit, at least something said in the rules that might pertain to something like that.
It can be argued, but I mean, if it's confirmed to be a glitch, which I guess it's kind of impossible to confirm that it was an actual glitch unless you, I guess, get a developer or something on the horn. But if it is a glitch, I mean, whether you fly out of the net in dramatic fashion or you get hung up on a post or something, a glitch is a glitch, right? And it's not the game behaving the way it should. And if it causes, adverse effects for one team, then it needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
I mean, on the same breath, though, I mean, there's all sorts of things in the game that I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, there's instances where it should be goaltender interference or it shouldn't be goaltender interference. There's icings that don't get called as icings or do get called as. I mean, a lot of times, there's no reason for it not to be an icing, and all of a sudden it's not an icing, and you turn over the puck because you're assuming it's an icing. Where do you draw the line? I mean, the game it's a game, and there's going to be issues. I think the league would be overrun with complaints and overturns if they had to look at every single instance where the game didn't do what it was supposed to do perfectly. So I think you just have to take your lumps and just go with the flow.
Yeah, I would.
You're right. I mean, I guess some players, mentally malfunction, and I guess you can't take them back to the idiot factory. So you're right about that.
All right, why don't we move on to what are actually the picks that we've made so far in the playoffs, and actually the semifinal picks as I have them up on the screen right now. Myself and MG had the Bears and the Wild in 7. Dead Soul had the Crunch and the Wild in 7. And Vibes with Crunch and the Heat both winning in 6. So with that, MG and I had one right. Vibes had one right, and Dead Soul did not have any right. So the current standings, again, we're using the scoring system that the website uses. Right now, I'm up with 21 points, 11 correct teams, 5 correct teams with the correct amount of games. Vibes is at 19 points. As he said, got his first team wrong so far, and so is 13 out of 14 in his picks. With like I said, 13 correct teams, 3 of them with the right amount of games. Dead Soul is 16 points, 10 out of 14, 3 of them with the right score. With the right amount of games. And MG also 10 out of 14, but only getting one of them correct with the right amount of games. So that's where we are right now at this point. It is still a long way to go for anybody to catch up. But if Vibes can pick the right team, and I will make sure that I go first in this one, although I'm pretty sure he knows who I'm picking. And I'm pretty sure because of that I know who he's going to pick. If he's able to get this right and get the right amount of games, he could take this one in the final week. We are pretty much at that point now where we can start talking about the finals, and we will do that in a minute, but we want to talk a little bit about the polls that we had up there. Will you be playing next season during the summer season, quote-unquote, Season 5, the last season of NHL 17? And 54% said, hell yeah, I wouldn't miss it. 30% still undecided. 7% at hell no, I want my summer, and 8.5% said only if Vibes will make his triumphant return as GM. So that's got to make you feel pretty good that a few people still want you back, Vibes.
No, it makes me very happy. I mean, some people like me more than they like Summer. Yeah, I can't complain.
Well, you are a ray of sunshine around here, so it's you're Mr. Warmth. Now that Don Rickles is gone, we can start calling you Mr. Warmth.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that. These guys are too fucking young to know what I'm talking about. The other poll that we had up was, what do you feel would be the best finals matchup? And the funny thing here is Heat and the Bears were in last out of the 4 matchups. The one people wanted to see the most was the Wild and the Crunch, which are the 2 teams that are out. And then Heat Crunch, then Wild Bears, and then Heat and Bears are the least favorite final that folks wanted to see. So found that pretty interesting that folks did not necessarily want to see this matchup. But thanks for the first poll, Dead Soul. I appreciate you putting that up because, again, there's been a lot of discussion in Shoutbox. Who's going to play? Who's not going to play? It is the last season of NHL, and it's interesting that you put that in the question because is there game fatigue at this point with this version of it? And I think I've been hearing more lately in the last month than before that people are getting tired of 17 at this point.
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, there's new games that have come out that a lot of people I'm seeing play now, other sports games and whatnot. But actually, there's one thing I should have put. I realized afterwards I should have put, I'm waiting for NHL 18. I'd rather play that kind of thing. That might be what I think a lot of people are thinking. Aside from it being summer and, a lot of people are going to be going away or, be working or whatever's going on with their lives. It's not necessarily going to be the busiest of times or I should say it's not going to necessarily be a time where people are going to have the time to play or want to. I mean, the weather's going to be nice only for so long for some of the people in certain parts of the areas like myself. But, yeah, I mean, I think there has been a little bit of fatigue with this game. I know even myself, I feel a little bit, it's just, I don't know. I'm ready for a new game. But at the same time, with the new game comes new problems. We all have experienced that. It's kind of, there's never a happy medium, it seems. We're always excited for the next game, but then we always seem to be disappointed for the first little while until they put some patches out. So, but I do think it plays a factor in it.
I think it would be sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think it'll be a little less growing pains. I mean, this is the third program. This will be the third game on the new PS4. I think that there'll be less growing pains than there have been on the first couple of games. I think it should be, hopefully it'll be a bit of a smoother transition. They kind of got their shit together a little bit more, I would hope.
Well, it all depends on what they pulled out of the game, right? I mean, that's the bigger problem. It's not about what are they going to add in. It's either what are they going to pull out of it that we like, or what code are they going to mess with that we feel is working perfectly fine at this point.
It's nice to listen to MG,
really,
full optimism.
Yeah, half glass half.
Full of life and happy, and yeah, it's good.
Happiness for me would be bringing back 6v6 lobbies. I think that is a big thing that this game was missing. Just as far as just getting games going. I mean, it was so hard to get drop-in games going some nights. Just wasn't even worth it half the time. 6v6 would solve a lot of problems, I think, for a lot of people.
The final poll that we have for this week, or for the finals coming up, which season has had the best or most exciting playoffs so far? And of course, we have 4 seasons to pick from. We'll get that poll up shortly today, and we'll leave it open all week when we get to next week's show, and we'll have the results for you for that one. We'll talk more about that next week after we actually get through this playoff season. It'll be something that we will discuss when we close out the show next week. So think about that. If you've been involved all 4 seasons, which one you think has been the most exciting with the playoff run so far? Finals matchup. Let's start with the finals matchup, and we'll start with some of the statistical analysis that Dead Soul's been able to do about this coming series, and let him throw some numbers out there before we all start discussing it. Go ahead, Dead Soul. Let us know what you've found out so far, besides the fact that Stockton won both games this year.
Yeah, I'm going to totally skip what's out on the website on the main page there. So I kind of just broke things down and found these stats for both teams for their entire playoffs thus far, and broke a couple of numbers down on top of that. But so far, if you look at the matchup between the Bears and the Heat, the Bears have the PK at 26.7% throughout the playoffs, with the Heat being at 23.4. The Bears had 71.4 PK to the Heat's 77.4. The time on attack for Bears have been 1349, and Heat 1751 on the time on attack differential. The Bears have had a plus 53 in the shot difference, and the Heat have had a 42 shot difference. The Bears have had 1 shutout, and the Heat have had 2. The Bears have a 50% face-off rating to the Heat's 52.9%. The Bears have had 129 hits, and to the Heat's 146 hits. The Bears have been plus 110 to the Heat's 80. The Bears have also had penalty minutes of 42 minutes, and the Heat have had 70. Now, I guess I should throw out there that the Bears have played 15 games, and the Heat have actually played 19, so that can factor into these numbers, obviously. So far, the Bears have allowed only 31 goals against in those 15 games, so that gives them a 2.07 goals against average, which is pretty phenomenal. That's quite good for the playoffs, or for any time in general. And the Heat have had 48 goals against in the playoffs, with a 2.52 goals against average. So again, that was 15 games for the Bears and 19 games for the Heat. So on to the goaltending duos here. We've got Moosepotamus with he's been doing great throughout the playoffs. He's had a 9-2-0 record, an 85% save percentage with 21 goals against on 140 shots, by the way, and he's had a 1.91 goals against average, which is just phenomenal, as I've mentioned before. And Sibs has gone 3-1-0 with an 80.4 save percentage, 10 goals against on 51 shots, with a 2.5 goals against average. You've been doing quite well yourself there. And the Flyers, for the Heat, he went 4-2-0 with 84.1 save percent average and 13 goals against on 82 shots, with a 2.17 goals against average. So he's been doing quite well himself. With Trash Clown taking most of the games he's got a record of 8-5-0. With a 79.7 save percent average, 35 goals against on 172 shots, with 2.6 goals against average. Now, so for the playoffs, the Bears have actually faced a total of 191 shots, and the Heat have actually faced 254 shots overall, again, in 4 more games. So those are the kind of the breakdown of the stats between the two teams. And if you look at all those together, I mean, obviously the goaltending for I don't know, I shouldn't say obviously. The goaltending for both teams has just been excellent overall. I do think that the edge goes to the Bears, though, for the goaltending tandem, just based on the numbers alone and the fact of their skills that, I'm very aware of, both of how you and Moose play. I've not really seen too much of the Flyers, or I've seen a bit of Traskon. I know he's a very good goalie too, but I know that the Heat have been taking on a lot of shots, so definitely more than the Bears have. We're going to have to see how the Bears are going to be able to, how much pressure they bring and how much shots they're going to get on the net. Am I supposed to make my picks right now, or should I wait for you guys to chime in?
No, I think we should talk a little bit about the stats at this point. This is part of the issue with East versus West in the final is that the schedule doesn't allow us to play each other enough times, and from when Game 1 happens to when Game 2 happens, could be a good amount of time. Game 1 was back on February 28th, and Game 2 was a month later in March. And again, we've had another almost full month since then. So many things can happen between the two teams. Change in players, change in lines, how chemistry has been going on with these players over the season. So you don't really get a good picture necessarily about what the games have been like between these two teams. The way you kind of get it if we're going up against a team in our own division, vibes. It's a lot different when you're looking at several matchups in your own division against a team you see all the time, and you could say, okay, we have a pretty good picture here. But 2 games against a team back in February and March, a month and 2 months ago, how much can we really take out of that going into the series?
Yeah, the sample size, number one, is really small.
Yeah.
And then even that, like you were saying, not to just repeat what you said, but even with the small sample size, it's, how much of that really even matters? How much of that is even relevant anymore? And you really just don't know. In a lot of ways, it's the law of the universe. It's it's what is real in this reality may not be in another one. So it's kind of like 2 completely separate, different entities coming together, for a final showdown. So it's really hard to gauge. I mean, to say one team has the advantage based off of two, right? You said they met each other twice.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't really see that you can draw that conclusion.
Yeah, two matchups is not enough data for sure, especially just with some of the changes that might have gone on in between. But I did forgot to mention, as I said before, the Bears do have 10 veterans on their team that I think do factor into their skill and their talent and their just, overall how they're able to play together already. Just, I think playing some of the best hockey that they've played all season. The Heat do have quite a few veterans themselves. They have 7, so I think that factors into their success as well, especially with some of those guys having a lot of chemistry prior to probably this season, I would assume. But those 2 matchups that they've had, I don't think give us enough, and I think you kind of throw those out the window personally, looking at it. And even with the stats that I just kind of threw out there, I mean, look what happened with the Wild. I mean, the stats were in their favor, but they didn't take the win. So anything can happen with these 2 teams.
I'm looking, one of the things I like to look at again, and I think that it plays an important role because of matchups, and that is just looking at the rosters of these 2 teams, especially the forward lineups, and you see the guys who typically play with each other and on a line, and I look at Stockton and you look at these lines, and typically you could look at a third line on some middle to lower tier teams and say, oh, okay, that's the line that totally is having issues, and this is why this team is having trouble making the playoffs. You look at Stockton to start with here, and there to me is not really a bum in the lot. They are all incredibly solid players who have formed some good chemistry as well, which, at this point in the season, if you have great chemistry and guys who are clicking, who are hitting on all cylinders, the way the Stockton Heat forwards are, that's incredibly tough to match up against. And in a way, if I'm the GM of the Bears, and thank God I'm not, I don't know if there is any particular strategy that I would follow to try and match up with them, because, they're all that good.
Yeah, they really are, though. I mean, that's a good point to make. I personally can't go through that list on Stockton and see any real holes on their D. And I mean, of course, their forwards are just, flying on all cylinders, and all of them are just, they can really score. And the same can be said for the Bears, too. But, yeah, this is a matchup for me that I'm still not I'm still trying to decide. I'd like to cheer the Bears on. I know I have got some friends on that team as well. I also know a few people on the Stockton that I'd like to see get the win as well. But
Sure.
I mean, with all these things that you can talk about with these teams, it's always been hard with these matchups, and that's pretty awesome. That I think it's not been so easy for us to make these decisions going through each series. But it does speak to the parity that's this league is finally starting to see and show. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what kind of game plan you'd really want to go into other than just obviously play your game and just keep the defensive battle. Like the Bears, I think, have done a really good job defensively, and I think they just need to stick to their game plan. And the Heat just need to stick to their game plan and just be relentless and just put those shots on the nets and just score as early and often as possible.
It's going to be a tough one for sure, but I mean, how about we turn our attention to the Season 5 monsters?
I agree. Monsters is what we need to be talking about.
I haven't heard about them in a while, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know we're disappointing Ryan R. on the Heat because he was really hoping we'd talk about Cleveland again. But no, sorry. We actually do want to talk about your team today, unless, of course, you'd rather we don't.
I will say that what scares me about what would scare me about Stockton is that there's a couple guys that have been underperforming in the playoffs for them. Pasta is an elite forward who's struggled a little bit in the playoffs. He's 2-3 with 11 points. I think very easily. I mean, he could start clicking, and that's just going to make them even that much harder to beat.
Absolutely.
I think Hershey has to be very wary of every single line on this stock.
Yeah, I would agree as well. And Pasta, to his own credit, has said that as well. Despite the fact that he feels he hasn't played nearly as well as he should have, that the rest of his team has been there for it. And that just goes to the strength, to talking about the strength of Stockton. Not only can other lines help pick the team up, but the rest of your line can get by well enough if you're struggling to keep your team in games, to win games. And to me, that's what makes either one of these teams a possible champion, is that even if somebody is struggling within the line, they could still come back and be competitive and win a game if somebody is struggling. And that's usually not the case. You usually, if somebody up on the front line is having a problem, the entire game is going to be in jeopardy and have that team's going to have a huge problem trying to get any chemistry going for that game, get any momentum going. But Stockton, and I, firsthand have seen it with the Bears, somebody could be having difficulty getting open, getting the puck knocked off their stick a lot. Both teams, though, even within that game, have the capability of picking up for that person and carrying the team through that game. And I think that's a big reason why these teams are here, because they're not out of it no matter what is going on within any given game. There are other. Let's just get it to this point for the finals. One key that you think is maybe the most important key to determining how this final is going to go. It could be about a specific team. It could be about a specific player. What do you think is the biggest key in this series? I want to start with MG on this and get his opinion first. There are a lot of players in this one. There are a lot of variables, individual variables that can make or break the series. But, what do you think is the biggest key that's going to determine how this one goes?
I mean, I think this is a pretty even matchup. I think it's going to come down to a lot of little things, and I think one of the big little things that needs to be taken care of is penalties. I think if you can minimize the amount of penalties that your team takes, stay off the penalty kill, and capitalize on the power plays when you do get them, I think that could be a huge factor in who walks away with the cup in the series.
Detzel, what are you thinking as far as one specific detail in this series that could make or break it?
Well, MG nailed one of the very glaring ones to me because, I mean, like I mentioned before, the Bears have the 42 penalty minutes to Heat's 70, quite a bit more from the Heat, but again, in more games. But the Bears do have a good a 26.7% on the power play. So, I mean, they're quite effective, and so are the Heat as well. But I mean, it's going to have to come down to the discipline of the team as a whole. It's going to have to obviously come down to, like it always does, I think, a defensive game as a team, as a unit. I think everybody's got to be able to bring their, their defensive style of play, but also be able to still somehow create those opportunities in the offensive zone. The goaltending is going to be a very key factor in this. I mean, just looking at the goalies on both sides and, the amount of goals going in on one side to the other, I think, both goalies are going to have to, just be very careful and cautious and do the best they can to just, help their team out as much as they can and hope that these, silly EA goals or glitches don't happen, obviously, especially in these games. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's hard to really pinpoint a specific one.
Vibes, you have any specific keys to this matchup that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be very important whether or not pasta is stuck in his nose, because if it is, it could be hard to breathe, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to perform out there with pasta stuck in your nose. No, I think that the biggest thing, and like I kind of always allude to this because I'm big on management. I think it's the way that these lines are matched up against one another. So I'll definitely be looking at matchups and the way that the players are used and the first two games of the series. To me, it's matchups in the very first two games of the series are absolutely imperative and huge, and they can move a series in one direction or the other. So,
I tend to always angle towards goaltenders because I think they definitely are the last line of defense and can really be a telltale sign of how a series is going to go. Two things about goaltenders in this series. I think both teams are pretty solid in that respect. And from the games that I've watched both of these teams play throughout the playoffs, I don't know if I've really seen too many times where the goaltender was the deciding factor. I think both teams have very solid defense to help out that goaltender, and it's not like Trash or Flyers on the other side or Moose or myself have necessarily had to do a lot of saving of the game. I think Moose has had a couple of opportunities where he needed to really stand on his head, and he did that. But for the playoffs throughout this season, I don't think either one of us has had to do an awful lot of that in net. And so goaltending, while it certainly is a factor, not as a big of a factor in this series as I've seen in earlier rounds in this playoffs and have seen in other seasons. I think even in some finals in season 2 and 3, we saw, well, especially season 3, I think we saw goaltenders on Charlotte who were amazing. 0-0 did a tremendous job getting his team there and winning it, helping them win it. I don't think goaltending. I don't know how much of a factor it's going to play. I don't think it's as big of a factor as it's been in other playoff runs because of those two reasons. Because of great defense in front of them, and because both teams are pretty well, stacked with this position. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but as a goaltender, it's one of the few times I don't think that we're we're something that should be watched closely. I think it's I think the breakdowns in a game are going to happen well before it ever gets to a goaltender being a deciding factor in this series.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. Definitely not to the level of last season with Charlotte, because if you ask me, I almost would say that 00 won the Calder for them, if you would ask
Yeah,
me.
I would
So,
agree.
it definitely won't be to that level, because I mean, that's just rare though. That just doesn't really happen, not in EA video game hockey.
And I think both teams have pretty stellar goaltending going into the series. So unless one of the teams has a major lapse in goaltending or has a bad series, I think you're right. I don't think it will be a factor. I think both teams are gonna have the same advantage going into the series with their goaltending.
Yeah, after having that kind of assessment, I do agree with what you've kind of pointed out there, and it's going to obviously come down to just who makes less mistakes, I guess, and obviously who puts more pucks in the net and on it.
We all just agreed with Sibs. Hold on, I gotta fucking throw up.
Honestly, between myself, Moose, and Trash Clown, we faced about 12, 13 shots a game on average during these playoffs. It's Flyers who's averaged about 20 shots a game in the 6 that he's played. So he's seen more action directly in front of him, and has played incredibly well during this playoff run at 84.1% save percentage. Moose is at 85. He has been tremendous at 1.91 goals against. And so, actually, there's nobody over 2.6. That's where Trash is. And so, goaltending is incredibly solid, but as good as it is, I think the defense in front of them plays a huge part of that. And we'll see that in the series. I don't think you're going to see any huge blowouts. I think you're going to see some incredibly close games all through. And, I think you might see a couple of overtime games. And with that being said, let's get going with the picks. Nothing I can say. I'm picking the Bears, and I'm picking the Bears in 7 because I have that much respect for Stockton. I don't think this is not going to be an easy one for us. If we win it, it's going to be tough all the way through. I think the series goes 7 no matter what. And I want to believe that we have a way to pull this one out at the end. Let's go to MG.
This is a tough one. I hate to pick against you, Sibs, but I picked them before the playoffs started, and I'm going to stick with Stockton. I'm taking Stockton in 6.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dead Soul?
This is I don't know. This is too much. Well, I mean, you've been the leader in this for a reason with your picks, and Vibes has been right behind you as well for another good reason. It doesn't factor in. The fact is, I mean, I'm rooting for the Bears. I'm rooting for them. I would love to see you guys win. I do have, I don't know. This is too much. If I had to pick, yeah, it's definitely going to Game 7. There's no question in my mind. I don't think either team is going to be able to get it in 6. I mean, not that they can't. I just think that both teams want it just as much as the other. They're both very well-rounded, and oh boy.
We'd like to get off the air soon. We still have to do the awards nominations to announce, so please get this done soon.
Pressuring me, I know. All right, well, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know. I have to go
Junior.
I can't spit it out. All
Commit.
Right, I have to go with Stockton. I'm sorry. I'm
son of a bitch.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Moose is not going to be happy.
I know he's going to cry himself to sleep tonight. I know. I'm sorry, Moose.
Looks like we've lost Dead Soul on the Skype here.
Yeah. Did we lose him?
Oh.
No. Oh, you want me to mute him? Okay. All right. Well, let me just give you a little fanfare here. This just in, Vibes picks. Let's get to those right now.
I'll be real brief. Give me the monsters. So this Bears team kind of seems like a team of destiny to me. It just seems like no matter what's thrown at them, they find a way, and they just seem to band together. So, I mean, you guys know what the standard measurement of heat is? It's actually a calorie. That's how you measure heat. You measure heat in calories. And bears, large bears, consume upwards of 20,000 calories per day. So that's a lot of heat that they eat. That being said, the Stockton Heat are killer calories. And summer's coming, the temperature's going up, so the heat is on its way. Give me the Heat and the ultimate slap in the face. Sorry, Bears, but I'm taking the Heat in 5.
Wow.
Oh, damn. And it's K-Cal, isn't it?
I am pulling this tape for next week. Either you're going to be incredibly right or incredibly wrong. But that is a gutsy call. And you know what? If we don't play our top game every game, that could absolutely happen. And
well, now you guys have some more.
And if I play 2 games, that could absolutely happen.
Depending on whether or not they botch the lineups, I could see it going 6. Could even see it going 7.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Heat wrap this up, and I think they wrap it up early. So make me right, boys.
Wow.
8 and 5.
By the way, Dead Soul, quote from Moose, 2 quotes. First one is, you sleazy bastard. And actually, no, I'm sorry, that's for Dead Soul. And then the second one for you, Dead Soul, is I'm coming for you. So Moose, while he does love you, now wants you dead. So
I made an enemy. Oh boy, I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
You know how psychotic Moose is, so it's not.
Yeah, you know what? I'm telling you, I'm still gonna root for you guys. But I mean, you guys you forced me to make a pick, and you're rushing me. So I think I just throwing
you
words
had
out there.
A few days to figure it out.
I've been trying. I'm trying and still, and I mean, I think, I mean, I don't know, man. I have to go with them. I can't. I don't know. I have one less friend now.
Well, it's.
I like the Bears, though. I just want to say, I like the Bears. I like you guys. You guys are good.
I think Bobby and Mafia were starting to come around to maybe being okay with you, but I don't think that's the case anymore. Now.
Well, I like them, and they're a good team, and I think they'll be even better losers. So,
prove us wrong, please win, Moose. Just you can rub it in my face from now on.
This also just in: Dead Soul is dead to Moose now. So.
His love for you is dead.
His love for you is dead.
He's probably going to leave the chat finally.
He's done for you. Well, I tell you what,
hopes and dreams might be dead after this week too. So,
well, we'll see what happens with this. First of all, there's no lineup in, and even if I did know, I wouldn't tell you. But I don't know who's playing what. So, if I am not playing tonight, we will bring the game one to you live here later on this evening. Obviously, we'll come on around 9:15, and the game is at 9:30. So. Check in later. I'll be throwing that in the shout box for you all to be able to know whether or not we're covering it live, but that'll all depend on the lineup. And once that game 1 lineup is in, I think it'll be fun to see what both teams are thinking. Are they going to be tentative about game 1, or do they want to absolutely take this one because it's incredibly important? If you're the GM of either one of these teams, I want to start with Dead Soul. What's your thinking? Do you feel like you have to take game 1 in the finals, or is that not that big of a deal for you, Dead Soul?
I mean, it's always important to try and get that first win. So I mean, I would want to focus on trying to make sure you get it and get it early. And I mean, if you can throw maybe your mid line or even your third line out for maybe if you can try and steal a win, that'd be great. But not everybody goes with that kind of strategy, and it works when it works. It can be really helpful. But I'd want to try and start with that win just to get the momentum and just get everybody's morale up starting and just it's just better to start with that first win.
All right, well, enough said about the finals coming up. We're going to close out the show with the award nominations, and we have an award committee that is made up partially by the 4 guys you see here today. MG, Dead Soul, Vibes, and myself. There are several others who are on the committee who play in the league. So we'll talk more about that later. But we want to get to the actual nominations and start giving you some idea about what we're doing here. First of all, this committee is everyone nominated someone. Nominated 3 people from each award. Could not be on your own team, so we didn't nominate ourselves or any of our teammates on the first run of nominations. And so keep that in mind when you see this. And there'll be a round of voting starting today through the end of the week that will happen only within the committee. The voting is only going to be within the committee, the same way it happens in the NHL PSN side. We'll get it down to 3 finalists in each category, and then next week we're going to vote for the winner. The 3 finalists will be based upon a point system, and the winner as well. Actually, the winner will be based with total votes, and we'll have tiebreakers as well. So the nominations are in. The award show to announce the winners will be on May 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's a Sunday night. We will do the award show that night. If there's any change, I'll let you know about that. But that's the initial plan, to actually announce these, not just put them up on the website. We actually do want to do a nice little ceremony and get these awards announced and get everybody some good recognition for the work they've done this season. There are obviously non-voting awards: most points, most goals, lowest goals against. Of course, the conference championships, the cup, of course, in there as well, and then of course, team with most points will also be part of what is shown. The first award that I wanted to talk about, and I just want to make sure that all my guys here are able to see what I'm looking at here, is the James Ellery Memorial Award, and that's an award that's going to go out to a few folks of the media side, people who have contributed to media all season long in the AHL. And that's something that I'm going to be announcing and we'll be selecting over the next couple of weeks before the show. So that's one award that will be done. The other one that is up for voting within the group here, that is more of a group award, is the Peary Memorial Award, Most Outstanding Team Management. In the AHL and NHL, they do one in the real leagues. They do like a coach's award. I wanted to do something for the GMs and the AGMs because I feel like they absolutely both need recognition. I think a lot of times AGMs don't necessarily get it or get seen much. And so these are our finalists for the Hershey Bears: Bob Swagger and Mafia Man; Binghamton Senators with Cresser and Dude; the Monsters with Big Freeze and Siege; Syracuse with JMM and Sific; the Iowa Wild with Mecca and Juggy; the Moose with Dead Soul and Heather; and Stockton with Loops and Biggie. And these are AGMs who are not under a contract. They are not getting paid. So it's just the one AGM that the GM had picked who will get credit for this award. And I want to let these guys talk a little bit towards the nominations here. You know, we talked somewhat yesterday about all the nominations and about this one. Certainly, all the teams that are involved in this one. You know, to me, the one thing that they all have in common is that they did a lot of work in the preseason. You know, actually before bidding happened, they all did an awful lot of work with research, with getting camp games together to see what kind of talent was out there, and they did a lot of work up front to form their teams. And I think, and I say that because I played in a lot of tryout games with a lot of these teams, and to me, their dedication to putting together a team and constantly working on it all season long is the reason why they're in there, in my viewpoint. What do you see as a common thread, Dead Soul, between all these management groups?
I guess all of them have expressed and shown, like you said, the dedication of being able to, you know, do what they can to make their team the best that it can be. I think the more research that you do and the more kind of scouting I think that helps tremendously for building any kind of team in this league. On top of the fact of just the dedication that each of these GMs have done and AGMs to help their teams out, and just to be able to, just be, I think, just good league leaders in the sense that they're hardworking, and I think they do have a good example to set for people that might want to look into getting into this in future seasons. And I know all these people on the list have done a really good job this season, not just creating good tough teams, but I think they've just done a good job of being good players and just having a good attitude and following the rules and just trying to make this league fun for the people involved in it. And I think that's, it all starts in management, whether the team's successful and whether the team is going to have, it's just a good playing atmosphere. And I think each of these GMs and AGMs did a really good job of helping one another as well as their teams to get to the places that they made.
And remember that, folks, that these are regular season awards. These do not count playoffs. This is, again, how it is done in the leagues, how it's always been done. And so we are not considering, hey, somebody had to play a great playoff run, so they should be considered. That's not what these awards aim to do. And so just keep that in mind when you look at the nominations. We'll get to the next one, which is the Fred T. Hunt Memorial Award about sportsmanship, determination, and dedication. Bubba from the Iowa Wild, MGM from the Moose, statistician from Binghamton, myself from Hershey, Mecca from Iowa as well, Intro, who we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll let Vibes talk to Intro in a minute with San Diego. Jay Durst, again with Iowa, Killer Scotch with Providence, and Lions with Rochester. I want to let Vibes talk about Intro, and then I want to let MG talk a little bit about Lions and Killer Scotch. But again, Intro, we know, was I thought was stuck on a Rockford team with a lot of wasted talent. He was traded. No, he was on Rockford to start with on this season.
Oh, he started on Rockford.
Yeah, and was on a team that was managed poorly and was left to die on the vine. And luckily for Intro, he got moved to San Diego and then very quickly took this team over. And they were not doing badly, but he got them directed to the playoffs and got them in the first round. And of course, they had a tough matchup with the Heat and lost that one in 5, but that's a big reason why I think Intro is on there. And I know you had a lot to say about him yesterday as well.
Yeah, I mean, some of the discussion, I guess we could probably save for maybe a final show, but I just know that he did a really incredible job of keeping things together. And it wasn't always easy for him. His dedication to his team in this season was nothing short of remarkable. He's a great guy. He's a good teammate. I've had him on my teams before, so I really don't see anyone on this list more deserving of this award, especially not you, Sibs. But I don't really see anyone on this, on this award in regards to nominations that are more deserving than Intro. So,
MG, we've talked about Lions, and certainly people saw his name flash up a lot this season, mostly in trades though.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that was traded, I think, 9 times this season. A lot of guys, I think if you got traded 3-4 times, you'd probably just say fuck it and just stop caring, stop showing up.
Right.
He stuck it out the entire season, and you never saw him complaining in the show box. You never saw him getting bans or warnings for not showing up for games. He just took whatever team he was on and gave his availability and played. I think that says a lot about a guy. I think a lot of guys in this league wouldn't have made it the whole season after that many trades.
The reason why that is interesting is because there are certainly players who quit immediately. there's a goaltender who I'll name him later. Who I looked at, he's been going off in the shout box a lot lately, and I looked up his record. If you want to know who it is, I'll give you the name later. You can look up his record on this site. How many times he was assigned to a team and then quit immediately, and then bought out his band and got signed to somebody else, I guess, that he'd rather play for. I mean, the numerous times this player has done that, has changed his name over and over again. To me, that is the opposite of what we want in this league. Lyons is a good-natured guy, a decent player, didn't give up, was there constantly all year long with a good attitude about it, and I agree with you. He absolutely deserves to be there. Killer Scotch, we mentioned. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just one more for Reliance. I mean, it's not like he's a bad player either. Obviously, he's good enough that other teams, I mean, he's a recognizable name. Other teams obviously are willing to take him. Mm-hmm. But just for whatever reason, he was passed around like the town hooker this year.
Yeah, you have a hard time being able to mesh with people if you're just going to be bounced around that often. I mean, it's one thing if you're a forward and a defenseman too. I mean, you don't even have a chance to find out who you can play well with if you're going to get moved around like that. So to be able to stick it in through there and just still play, like that's a huge, hats off to you there, Lions.
Yeah, he wasn't moved around for the same reasons that Mikey D is, because Mikey D sucks and he's a terrible person. But Lyons is a good guy and a good player, so totally different reasons.
I think Mikey was more so his contract that got him moved around.
Yeah, his contract really screwed him.
Yeah.
Oh, it was his contract? I thought it was the fact that he speaks.
All right, we'll move on from this one and head over to the Baz Bastien Award for Best Goalie.
You wanted to talk quickly on Killer Scotch though as well.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you give a quick, because obviously he helped the Bruins tremendously this season.
Well, I think it's a very similar story to Intro as far as he kind of just. I was started off with Providence this season for the first couple weeks, and that was one of the most disorganized. It was a nightmare, and I was traded. Didn't ask for a trade; it just happened. I got traded, but eventually, I think I don't know if Jan Sonnedy quit or what happened. I think he was banned. Killer Scotch stepped in, and somehow after the team in shambles was able to put it together, made some big trades, and made that team into a playoff team after starting out the season horribly. And I think to just step into that role, he didn't sign up to be a GM this season. He was just kind of offered it because no one else on the team wanted to take it. And he ran with it, and I think the league is better for it.
And again, we would love to have more guys like that running these teams. I think the league would be a lot more successful if we can get that from top to bottom. We'll move on to Best Goalie. As you see, B Nice, Trash Clown, Moose, OMG Price, Bipolar, and Tush from Springfield. Skyhawk and OMG Price, as I mentioned, both from Iowa. Tyler Lokey, who is one of my favorites in this game. Good guy, good player, adapted well to 17. He's in there. Clutch Dolphin, of course, has been on winning teams most of the time. And Trap MC, who moved a little bit this season up and down and between AHL teams, didn't let that bother him. Still had a fantastic year. All warranted nominees for sure, and guys who did a tremendous job in helping their team get as far as they did. And boy, I tell you, Vibes, it says a lot about the goaltending, stock here in the AHL. There are certainly other guys that could have been mentioned who also had some pretty decent seasons, but there's plenty of goaltending talent in the AHL right now.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the awards. Well, they're all really hard. I mean, a lot of guys could have been nominated for pretty much all the awards that were not. So they're all tough. But the goaltenders especially was really tough because there's so many names that could have been thrown in that were not.
Did we lose Vibes there for a second? Okay.
Sounds like it.
Oh, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Oh,
there you go.
Hear you.
Yeah, we lost you there for a sec. Go ahead.
I was trying to tell you to change the screen.
No, I'm fine. I think you had a dropout. That might be the case. We're looking at the best goalies right now, and I'll let Dead Soul talk quickly about Tyler and what he meant for their team in the Moose.
Well, I know, as you mentioned, I obviously didn't pick him because I wasn't able to, but I'm sure I would have picked him as well for sure with this award. But yeah, I mean, him along with all these other guys, they did outstanding this season. A guy like Tyler, he was put in most of our games, and just, he was one of those guys that, if we had any kind of defensive breakdown as a team, and there's a one-on-one, he just makes some crazy saves. You can really count on him, and I think he belongs right up here with these guys. I think all these guys have proven throughout the season that they're those kind of goalies that you can count on. Like, they'll make those saves when you need them, and they'll make some of the saves that will save the game. It's nice to see him up there along with Moose and Price and Be Nice. I mean, everybody on here deserves to be there, and I know that we're gonna get to that later, but we do have the numbers to back all this up, and we'll, I'm sure, share all those statistics with everyone, because the fact is, I mean, each of these guys were just absolutely great for their teams.
We'll move on to the defenseman, the Eddie Shore Award for Best Defenseman, and you see the list as Iowa has 3 nominees on here: Bubba, 17, Off-Road, and Ryan was here. The Stockton Heat with Biggie and Mathau. Syracuse with JM. Utica Comets with Philly. And the Binghamton Senators with the Statistician. Again, a good stock of defensemen. We thought there could be an issue with at least right-side defensemen this season because of such a shortage of that, but I think defensemen overall this season probably better than I would have anticipated, and the quality on every team was tremendous. I don't think I don't think I saw a lot of weakness in too many teams in this area. I think defense got a good boost this season, a lot more talent there, and again, probably more guys that we could have named in here, but these were the 8 consistent nominees amongst all of us, and these guys, you talk about Iowa and Stockton defense, a big part of why they're successful, and we've seen these guys produce all season long. I'll throw it out to MG. There's this is a huge reason why all of these teams got as far as they did, and you're talking about teams that got to the quarter or semifinals at least. Defense. I don't know. In a lot of sports, defense is set to win championships. I think in this game, defense and goaltending can do an awful lot for you, and these guys meant a lot for their teams.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think defense can sometimes be underrated. As far as if you have a good defense, usually you don't notice it because they're just doing all the right things. They're not flashy. They just get the job done. The only time you notice defense is when they're fucking up, basically. But I think a lot of teams are definitely putting more stock into defense, a defense first kind of game plan. I don't think you can totally. You need offense to score, but if you can put up 4 or 5 points a game, but if you let in 7 because you have no defense, it's not going to help. So, and I think there's a lot of good names in this list, and I think there could be even more. I mean, there's a lot of good defenders in this league, a lot of guys that enjoy playing the position and play well.
We'll move on to the rookie nominees, the Red Garrett Memorial Award. As you see, Bear from the Moose along with Puck Zone. Heavy on Moose and Senators here. 2 guys who were tremendous for the Moose, who were probably a big reason. We'll let MG and Dedsell talk to them about why you guys were so successful. Getty Granite from Iowa, and then 3 from Binghamton, the Statistician, Wes, and RB Kresser. So, some great rookies this season. Again, a rookie is someone who started the season as a prospect. It just doesn't count for guys who played their first season in PSN. If they have a career over in Xbox, they were not considered for this. They did not have a prospect tag on them, and so they were not considered a rookie for this. So these guys all, you look at the numbers for these guys and what their strength of schedule is, which you'll get a chance to see when we get the stats out later today or tomorrow for all the nominations, and you'll get an idea of what these guys have been able to do. But I do want to talk to MG and Dead Soul about Bear and Puck Zone and what having two guys like this who are relatively new to PSN meant to your team, and what were you expecting, and I got to believe how much they overshot your expectations. We'll start with MG about these two players. I want to start with Bear so that people get a better idea about the type of player that he is.
Yeah. Sorry, just to clarify though that you don't have to be a prospect to be the rookie. I mean, you can be an amateur. It just has to be your first season in the AHL. You can have a full season in the NHL or the CHL.
Yeah.
And have games that make you an amateur status player.
Right. Yeah. There were a couple who. Yeah, I kind of meant that more towards the couple of players who did incredibly well this year, but were people thought maybe they're rookies because it was their first season in PSN. That's not how that works. The league actually dedicated those players as veterans, and so they weren't eligible. I just wanted to clear that up. But you're absolutely right.
Basically, Squid was originally in the discussion, and he would qualify as a rookie on the PSN. He's not a rookie overall, so he was thrown out of the mix.
Right. And anybody else?
I don't think you can call anybody a rookie that's had 12 seasons in LG on the Xbox side. So
yeah. I don't care if they played that on if they played that on a Game Boy. That's still a lot of experience. So yeah, it's we had to eliminate those guys. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and talk about Bear.
Yeah, Bear. I mean, he's a really nice guy too. He's a pretty funny guy. I think you could tell he's very passionate about wanting to win, and he's a good communicator. I mean, I played with him a lot this season. He wants to work at getting better. He wants to make his team better around him, and he just knows how to play the game. And it obviously shows this season with the amount of points that he was able to put up. Same with Puck Zone. Puck Zone is he's a young guy, but he's a really nice guy, very committed to the team, always wanting to try to practice as much as he can. And I think you look at his stats this season, if he didn't have to go on IR for the 1 week, I think he missed three games this season. I think he would have pushed Lobo for the scoring title as far as goals this season. And I mean, that's a pretty big thing to do in your first full season in the AHL to compete for the goal title.
Dead Soul, quickly, your take on these two players.
Yeah, I mean, MG already pretty much hit the nail with both these guys. I mean, Bear was just great for us. He was always there, always ready to practice, always ready for games, signing up for all the games along with Puck Zone. They just both had excellent seasons, and they were both really good people that just helped overall with just having a good kind of sense of camaraderie and just being able to communicate in games. I mean, Puck Zone in particular was somebody that is constantly looking to change his he's always open to change and just listening to where he needs work or whatever. And the fact is, I mean, he just put the points up there. He was able to score for us and make things happen. And he's always eager to just do his best and just hear what might, what he might need to do a little differently to help kind of create and develop his, his overall kind of team game. And Bear was just, he was somebody who came in with a really good communication and being able to, he's somebody who can feed people the puck and just make the plays that you need to make to win games. And a lot of the time, obviously, with both these guys, you could put them in and just kind of almost feel very confident that, it's going to be a win for your team and that, everybody's going to have a good time with those two on the ice. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really happy both of them made it. I certainly would have picked them if I was allowed to, and I'm glad to see them up there. They definitely deserve to be up there. And, yeah, I hope one of those guys will take it.
Now, can we just clarify too that we weren't able to vote for our own teammates. So I know you guys are seeing two Manitoba guys up here. Both Edsel and I had no way to vote for either of these guys. These guys were all put in by the other members of the award committee. And I think we will be releasing our statistical analysis for the league to kind of see how we've determined some of these nominees as well.
Right. Yeah, we'll get those out. Like I said, either later today or tomorrow, we'll get out the stats for the nominees and why they are in consideration. And certainly Binghamton with 3 candidates for rookie tells you what they were able to do with some young talent on their team this season. They should be commended as well. Finally, the MVP, and we'll let Vibes talk again since if he hasn't fallen asleep yet. We'll give him a chance to talk about the MVPs. As you see, the Les Cunningham Award in the AHL is the league MVP. You see Squid is up there for Cleveland. Lobo, Mafia Man, OMG Price, the only goaltender up here. Pasta, Pogues, the only non-playoff player up here, and followed by Puck Zone, and Ryan was here again. Some incredible talent here. Vibes, if you could start a team with these with these 7 or 8 guys, you'd probably be pretty clear to win the whole damn thing, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, all these guys can play, and there's a reason why they're up for the MVP. It's the MVP award is kind of taken from the definition of it, where it's the value to the team, and most of these guys here are absolutely invaluable to their team, where you can't really put a figure on how important they are. So all of them very deserving. I mean, you can make a case for each and every one of these guys, especially Mafia Man. From what I understand, he's management over there, right? So he obviously his value is just through the roof. If I'm not mistaken, I think Pasta is management too, isn't he? Or am I wrong about that?
No, he's not.
He's not management. Okay, well, either way, he's still invaluable, and most of the players on this team are on this nomination board are.
Yep, I would agree.
Dead Solar MG, anything to add to the nominee list for MVP? I mean, certainly all these guys are warranted. We probably could have put a couple more on there, but I think within this group here, we probably, for the most part, have it right.
Yeah, it can be a tough one to really kind of put this list together, but ultimately I think everybody on here is on here for the right reasons, and they each contributed to their teams in a tremendous way, and in different ways. But yeah, every one of these guys, they've earned their spot, and I think it's a good little list that we've got it narrowed down to, and it's probably going to be a pretty tough decision once we all make those votes to see which one will be the ones that we pick.
All right, that's it for the nominees, and again, we're going to have the stats out later on to show you what these guys have done during the season. Some important stats, certainly not all of them, but some of the measurement tools that we're using to try and place some importance on what these guys have done all season long, and use it for a guideline. In the end, we're going to look at more stats. We're going to do some more analyzing of each of these players before we pick a final vote. But again, the voting for narrowing down for the final 3 in each category will happen this week, and then the committee will vote for the winners next week. So we'll do the award announcement on the 21st. We will not do it before then, even though the voting will be done. And we hope you'll tune in. We'll absolutely have more information on that as we go along. So
we're. Can I make just a quick shout out here before
Yeah,
we end the show.
sure.
Tips, I just want to say that the season 5 NHL owner list has just been released about an hour or two ago, and just want to give a quick congratulations to our own Dead Soul, who will be taking over as the owner of the Winnipeg Jets for season 5.
Wow, congrats, dude.
Well, thank you very much, guys. It's I'm definitely happy and honored to be selected for that, and I know it's going to be it's going to be a learning season. It's going to be tough, and I'm just happy the league took a chance with me, and I just want to be able to show them that I can do what I did with the AHL team, and I'm hoping to have some success up in the NHL.
Well, that means we will not be playing against each other then this coming season, because I know I'm not going to be in the NHL. So,
oh, we'll see. We'll see.
Anyway, yeah, congratulations again. You can go on the site and check that out yourself. But a lot of names you've seen before in Ryan 28, Schroyer, Buds is up there with Toronto again.
Interesting seeing Agger taking over Minnesota.
Yeah.
He did a good job in Binghamton.
Congrats to him as well.
Yeah. Barris, like I said, Dead Soul there over in the West, and a lot of the folks we've seen before are continuing to head up teams. So good. I like that we're seeing some of the owners who've done well continue to stay there. Help build up that league, and hopefully we'll get some consistency in the AHL as well. Final thoughts about the finals. We'll start. We always want to finish with vibes because it'll be fun. Let's talk about a final thought about this Heat Bears matchup. MG.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good series. I think a lot of people. Obviously, I mean, look at that poll question. It wasn't the matchup that people thought was going to be the most exciting. But I think it's an underrated matchup. I think this is going to be a pretty high-paced, exciting series. I think it has a chance to go the distance. And I think I don't think you could ask for a much better series. I'm looking forward to it.
Dead Soul?
All I can say is moose, 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 moose. No, yeah, it's going to be a great matchup. I think everybody, I think will be a little bit pleasantly surprised with how it's going to go, and it is a hard one to call, and it's even for me, obviously my choice was just a little bit more on the gun. I think, I think it's going to be a great series. I think it should probably go the distance, and I think it's something that everybody should be watching to see some really good hockey and to root for whichever team you're rooting for. But yeah, I think this is going to be one of the more exciting ones that we've seen so far.
Before I let vibes go, I will tell you one thing that is a definite. Moose and I and Moose especially, were incredibly nervous playing those games last round. I know Moose will absolutely be jumping around before the game. This is what we play for, and so it'll be a controller gripping 60 minutes worth of play for both of us in any game that we play. So it'll be fun to experience that for the first time, and glad that I'm able to do it back with the Bears again. That's kind of fun. Vibes, we're going to let you have the last word on this series.
My final thoughts are I got to poo. I've been squeezing my butt cheeks together for like the past half hour. I'm just ready to blow. All right. Yeah, I mean, I think as long as they don't let you play net, Sibs, I think the Bears have a chance.
They have a minimum. They have to.
Come on.
I think Wilkes-Barre had the same kind of idea with you in the playoffs, Vibes.
Yeah, take a long walk on a short pier. All right. I don't know. I just kind of want to. While I did pick Stockton in 5, I don't want it to be easy for Stockton either. So I just want to reiterate to the Bears. I picked every series that I picked this playoff round. I picked in 6 games. All right. I picked against you guys in 5. I said you're going to lose in 5. Mm-hmm. In fact, I thought I was being generous when I said 5. I was thinking about saying you were going to get swept. So just take that into account. and prove me wrong. But yeah, I picked against you in 5.
I'll be getting Vibe's address out to every member of the Bears team shortly, and you can mail him a nice steamy package if you'd like. Yeah, all kidding aside, the Heat are good enough to look. They were almost good enough to sweep their last opponent, the Wild. They're not going to make the same mistake that they did last time, and they're not going to get overconfident. And so they're in the finals. They're here to win this. They're going to fight incredibly hard every game, but I know the Bears will as well. And I think that's why it's going to be a 7-game series. I think in the end it's going to be what we expect it to be for the most part. And the Bears, as long as that chemistry still keeps going, we're going to make a series out of this, and you're going to see two good teams collide. So, thanks again, Vibes, Dead Soul, MG. We'll talk next week. We'll close out this season, and perhaps even do some cleaning out of the closet of other things we wanted to talk about during the year. That we never got a chance to, and like some things like with the Pro League and some possible things about rules that we should talk about. But until then, I hope you guys enjoy watching the series.
Good luck to you, man. Have a good game either tonight or whenever you're playing, and I know you guys will do really good, but good luck to you for sure, man.
Vibes, you're not going to say good luck to me?
Yeah, good luck. No, I hope you do well.
That did not sound sincere at all.
I'll be pulling for you. Well, I'm just, I think next week I'm going to do the show from my bathroom this way in case I run into this situation.
Well, as we let Vibes go to offload a little bit, we'll talk to you guys either later on tonight or whenever the next game happens in this series that I don't play. Until then, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to all you folks again next week.